Hi, I'm Brian Dipert, Editor-in-Chief of the Embedded Vision Alliance, and I'm here today with Helena Perslow, Senior Market Analyst for Automotive and Transport with IMS Research. Hi, Helena. How are you?
Hi, Brian. I'm fine, thank you.
Great, thanks. So this is the second in a planned series of video interviews with various analysts at IMS Research. You may have seen the first interview in this series, which I conducted in late February with John Cropley from IMS. In that initial video, we talked about IMS Research in general and about its involvement with the Embedded Vision Alliance. And we're not going to repeat that today. So if you would like a background on IMS Research, please head to the website and check out that video, as well as other information about IMS that's on the website. But Helena, to begin, if you would, tell the viewers a little bit about your educational and your professional background.
Right, so I have a bachelor degree in business administration from De Montfort University in the UK. And then sort of professional experience that is really relevant to what I'm doing today is I work for General Motors in the UK for about 3 years. And then I've been here with IMS within the Automotive and the Transport group for about 5.5 years.
Okay. So in the Automotive and Transport group, what technologies and product trends do you specifically follow?
So my focus is really advanced driver assistance systems. And then also perhaps looking a little bit more in depth in the vision side of ADAS applications. So that's very relevant for today's discussion.
Tell us a bit more detail, if you would, about just how video analytics is used in various areas and in various applications within an automobile.
Mm-hmm. So today, video analytics would be used in what we call advanced driver assistance systems. And that is really systems that are quite safety focused, I would say, although they might be marketed as convenience. But it's really systems that using video analytics to make either the driver or really the car in some cases aware that we are approaching an object or a pedestrian really fast, and either the driver are being alerted by some visual or maybe some audio devices, or, as I said, in some cases the vehicle actually brake or take some action themselves. So really, video analytics is used to detect objects and pedestrians.
Okay. How about other areas, other applications where it's beginning to be used or maybe used in the future? I know in the lead up to this interview, we talked about things like rear view cameras, systems that detect when you're potentially about to do an unintended lane change, systems that alert the driver to inattention, whether that be sleeping or texting or something like that. Are there other areas like that?
Yeah, you're right. Those are areas as well. So I guess in a way it's sort of monitoring an object or something specific, like you were saying, the lanes on the road. So if you unintentionally are staring out of your lane, so you would glide over the lane markings on the road, the vehicle would alert you on that. Or a camera could be focused on you as a driver, and when it sort of detects that you are nodding off or not perhaps looking straight on the road, or the car would alert you that you have to focus on the road. So that is also areas where video analytics are used. So really, I didn't mention this, but there are 10 ADAS systems currently available on the market today, and out of those 10, there are 5 specific applications where video analytics are used. And that is a mixture of systems that are exclusively using a camera, or in some cases alternatively using a camera. And then there are some sort of variants of these systems which could do more complicated things than some other applications. But really five systems, and they would be night vision, driver monitoring, like you mentioned, lane departure warning, as well as we mentioned. Traffic sign recognition, and that's obviously what it is recognizing traffic signs. And then, for example, if you're speeding above the speeding limit, it would alert you to that. And then we have collision mitigation, which has to do with if you're trying to, well, not trying to, if you unintentionally are approaching an object too fast, the car would alert you to that.
Okay. I had been up until just a few seconds ago, always kind of struggling a little bit to understand the key application for the road sign detection. It's if it's an upcoming exit on the highway, well, hopefully you'll see that yourself. But I thought, well, okay, maybe road construction or something like that. But you nailed it for me. Of course, it's speed limit, and alerting the driver to the fact that they're going too fast. That makes a lot of sense.
I think that is the obvious one, but I don't know if you've ever been to Japan. I haven't been driving in Japan, but I've seen pictures, and some roads are just looking manic. They have so many traffic signs on one side of the road, so I can see why you wouldn't be able to see what is most important, because it's just telling you 100 things at one time. So, and that's where I think a traffic sign recognition was sort of invented as well, really out of need in Japan.
Well, as long as they don't alert us to advertising billboards that are going by, I suppose it's okay.
I don't think so.
Of the 5 major systems that you spoke about a few minutes ago, in how many cases is there for each system a dedicated camera unit with a dedicated image sensor and image processor, etc., versus multiple systems that share a common camera?
Okay, so for night vision and for driver monitoring, you would just have a camera. And those are the 2 systems as well, which would only use a camera. There aren't any alternative sensor technology for that. And the other 3, the traffic sign recognition, well, no, that's not true. Traffic sign recognition is really, you can say it's sort of an add-on to lane departure warning, although it sounds weird, but you would have a camera for lane departure warning, and some of the more advanced lane departure warning systems would also use the camera for traffic sign recognition. So you wouldn't just have a traffic sign recognition system, or you wouldn't just buy that system separately. And then collision warning would actually predominantly use radar at the moment, whereas some of the high-end systems would use a camera as a complement. So you would have a secondary sensor for better accuracy. So there's a huge potential for cameras for collision warning, but at the moment it's not very much used.
Okay. One of the other things we talked about a bit in preparing for this Skype call today is camera-based systems versus alternative technologies, or perhaps complementary to, in addition to other technologies like radar and like laser. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Sure. So for lane departure warning, you can actually either use infrared, for example, as well as an alternative. It's not very much used at the moment. The majority of systems are using a camera. But depending, I suppose, weighing costs and other things, there are potential to use other technology as well. Lane departure warning is, on the other hand, quite a small system. The take rate is quite small at the moment, whereas for collision warning, it is fairly high take rate. If you're looking to ADAS as a whole within all the system, collision warning has quite high take rate. But as I said just earlier, at the moment, radar are being predominantly used for collision warning. And then cameras are used as a secondary sensor. But I think because of legislations that are coming through, NHTSA are looking at pedestrian detection specifically, and are due to come with some recommendations in 2013. And then in Europe, we have the NCAP, where they are doing some new test recommendations where autonomous braking would be included, and there you would need collision warning. And with braking, when the car would do an autonomous braking, they would apply quite a lot of G-force to brake, much more than a human normally would be able to do. And in order not to do that sort of just on a whim, they would probably, the high-end systems would for sure have two sensors, so they wouldn't just apply this high G-force without being really sure that it's needed. So I see for high-end vehicles, which to a high degree already have two sensors, they will for sure have two sensors. And then as we see vehicle manufacturers being eager to obtain this 5-star rating for NCAP, they will also have collision warnings. And then in order to perhaps gain this sort of distinction of 5-star, you would have two sensors. So there's this huge potential for that, not only because it's the ADAS systems which have already quite high take rate, but because of the 5-star rating.
Okay.
Sorry to be a little bit long-winded there.
No, that's fine. No, the information is very useful. Thanks. I was going to ask about, actually, next about attach rate or take rate and market size, at least currently. Wondering if there's anything more you'd like to say about that. I'm particularly curious to find out whether the attach rate and the market size are dramatically different, say, in Europe versus Japan versus the United States versus other parts of the world, and how you see that evolving over time.
Okay. So currently we are unfortunately seeing very low take rates worldwide. If we're looking at the whole market, we're seeing maybe a take rate of about 0.5% to 1% roughly worldwide. Worldwide is not a fair picture. So if we're looking at perhaps North America and Japan and Western Europe in isolation, we see some systems doing quite well. For example, collision warning in Europe with a take rate about 4%. If we're looking at the different markets and compare them to each other, Europe have slightly higher take rates than North America and Japan. North America and Japan has quite similar take rates. But I see it is changing, and North America is sort of having higher take rates in the next couple of years, and it might even be higher than Europe, because we've seen Ford, for example, being quite aggressive, making ADAS available for all their models. The difference might be that because we have sort of a slightly more high-end vehicle manufacturers in Europe, and we can argue about that, whether that's true or not, but we see Mercedes and Audi and BMW coming from Europe. And they might have slightly sort of higher technology, more advanced technology for the same system, whereas Ford has decided to make these type of system available on a much wider range of models, but maybe slightly less advanced in technology. So even if we, in a couple of years, I'm quite sure we're going to see the same sort of take rates, the technology would be slightly different in the different regions. Okay.
With other technologies that have eventually made their way into automobiles, and I'm thinking specifically of satellite radio, Sirius XM here in the United States, but more generally of various audio technology advancements going all the way back to the CD player, I suppose, over time. It takes a while, even after the car manufacturers are convinced to add a technology either as standard or as an option, for it, of course, to get designed in and into the production flow and available in systems. So in the early years of a technology, I've noticed that it's predominantly an aftermarket, small, but an aftermarket approach, and then eventually becomes OEM. Do you also at all see that with these various ADAS systems, and how do you think that's going to evolve over time?
So in my study, or how I work, I don't usually look at aftermarket specifically. Mm-hmm. And there is sort of a reason for that, because ADAS system doesn't really exist so much on the aftermarket. They do exist. There are a few companies who are offering this as aftermarket options, but I think because it's so safety focused, it's nothing that suppliers sort of just like that would like to offer to consumer to install, possibly by themselves, and then that could have some really bad consequences if they're not installed properly, or if they're not connected right, or whatever, or if a driver is sort of over relying on the systems where they shouldn't, and things like that. So because it's so focused on safety, they aren't so much available on the aftermarket. So I don't see that really changing because of that reason, because the consequences can be quite great if something would go wrong.
Okay. One of the things we talked about last week was the fact that my personal car, a Volvo cross-country station wagon, because I bought it off the lot, I didn't custom order it. It came with a couple of now primitive ADAS systems, parking assistance, basically, that I initially thought, fine, I'll take it. It came with the car, but I never would have ordered this standard had I, custom configured it myself. Now, I can't imagine what I would do without the beep systems on both the front and the rear. They quickly transition from sort of superfluous extras to essentials. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that with respect to these more advanced ADAS systems. Is it going to be the case that even though Ford, for example, offers these as options, not standard items, across a range of car configurations, that a consumer isn't going to get the value of such a system until they've had an accident, and and then realize, if I had gotten this system, it could have prevented that, and they'll get it on the next car? Or is there some amount of education that can be done either by government entities or by the manufacturers themselves or by safety groups that will allow consumers to get it right up front?
Yeah, it is a dilemma though, I think, because for a lot of people it is just that epiphany that you were sort of talking about, that you yourself had, that, oh right, these systems are quite handy to have actually. And you might not realize that until you are in an accident, and that could have been too late to have that epiphany by then. But I think, of course, it's never bad when a vehicle manufacturers are making these systems available across the range, because it might make a consumer group aware of their existence. Which previously they wouldn't have been aware, not to be too prejudiced, but a Ford driver is perhaps not looking for the same thing as a Mercedes driver. So I think that is a really good thing. But the next step is, like you said, maybe consumer awareness. You need to get people to test drive them and get a feeling for what these systems can do for you and the benefits of them. And perhaps we need some sort of legislation or some other sort of push from some authorities to get more people aware of them and to drive them. And hopefully, these star ratings will get more people or more vehicle manufacturers to put them in the car, and then subsequently making more people aware of them. But there need to be more consumer awareness, and not just awareness of their existence, but I think just the experience of it is the most important thing.
Okay. Quick question as an aside. We talked about legislation a bit already. Do you typically find that legislation in one part of the world, such as the pending rear view camera legislation in the United States, does that tend to influence car manufacturers' adoption of a certain technology in other geographies, just for supply chain simplification purposes, or would legislation here in the States, for example, not necessarily influence a technology's adoption for a vehicle in Japan, for example?
Typically, they do influence each other. And some vehicles are only being manufactured in one part of the world and then exported to the rest of the world. So it's not really practical then to make several different versions of the same vehicle on one line. So in that case, yes, they are being influenced by each other. But then, of course, there is a cost involved there as well. So just adding a system that had very small take rate perhaps before, and where vehicle manufacturers could see quite good margin because of the option cost. It would be quite a step to just add this as a standard on all vehicles. But it's a huge influence, in let's say maybe 1.5 or 2 vehicle cycles, you probably would see that mirroring each other in North America and Europe and Japan. So yeah.
Okay. Are there any other more general topics related to supply chain and or the competitive environment that you'd like to touch on with respect to ADAS systems?
In general, for the ADAS market, I would say that it's still a very sort of automotive focused market. And what I mean by that is that we see very few new suppliers entering the market that hasn't already been active on the automotive market before. So that is true both from the system supplier side, but perhaps more interesting on the camera and the processor side is sort of the suppliers that's already been involved in the automotive market that is also being involved in the ADAS market. There is a very successful exception to that on the processor side, and Mobileye entered the market specifically focusing on automotive, and they're doing really well on the ADAS side. And I think we see this changing as well. We're seeing more consumer, perhaps focused suppliers entering this market because they see a huge potential for this market. And I think part of that is going back to a little bit what you were talking about, the rear view legislation in North America. That's where we see the huge, the biggest potential, because if we see rear view cameras being mandated on every vehicle, it's not decided yet, but if we do, and it's sort of indication that is what's going to happen. One thing for OEMs to sort of distinguish themselves from all the other vehicles that have rear view cameras would be to add some intelligent video to it, where when you're reversing, you would also object and be alerted about objects when you're reversing. So there's a huge potential on that side for that, and that's why we see newer sort of new suppliers entering this market, I think.
Okay. Any other opportunities and or barriers to entry that you'd like to touch on, or have we covered that pretty much already?
Yeah, I think so. The opportunities, like you're saying, the sort of potential legislation and star rating, and seeing at the automotive market as a whole, we're talking about 70 to potentially 100 millions in a 10 years period vehicles being produced each year. But the barrier would be that the quite high cost involved entering the automotive market, and there's always cost entering a new market, loss of research and development, etc., etc. But for the automotive market, it's much more so because for a vehicle, if you buy a vehicle, you expect it to last perhaps 3 years, 5 years, and some people just they have their car until it dies, maybe 10 to 15 years down the line. So you expect the car to last a good few years, whereas, for example, a mobile phone, where we see a lot of cameras, of course, in now, we perhaps expect them to last for, I don't know, I would expect it to last 5 years, but most people would probably expect it to just last 1 or 2 years. So it's a huge difference there for camera suppliers entering the vehicle, the automotive side. The expectations on the how durable the camera would be is completely different. So that is a huge barrier for people to enter going into the automotive side.
How about in terms of OEMs and brand names? I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts about this. It's Mobileye prompted me to ask this particular question. That is a brand that was unknown until they entered the market, and you're right, they've been relatively successful in entering the automotive ADAS space. Do you think it will be fairly common for a brand new brand to be successful? Would a speakerphone manufacturer that already has a presence in the automotive market potentially be successful in expanding its product line into ADAS systems? Would a home surveillance systems manufacturer be successful potentially in expanding beyond the home into the automobile? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, as I sort of mentioned, I think it is in general quite difficult for somebody who's supplying sort of more consumer goods specifics entering the automotive market. But you shouldn't knock anybody's expectation and knowledge. They might have some really good knowledge and expertise that we might need in the automotive industry. So it's finding that niche, or maybe collaboration with other established automotive suppliers. Then you could forge a really good opportunity, and there's huge potential in that. So perhaps specifically for video analytics, if you are doing algorithms, that is nothing that is automotive specifics in that sense. You could enter the market that way, that's happening already.
Okay. Great, thanks. That makes sense. How about just wrapping up? Any other overall trends in ADAS? Either in general or in any of the 5 specific system types that we've talked about that you'd like to highlight that we haven't already mentioned?
I think just in general, I know I mentioned that the take rates now are quite low, and we're talking about overall the market in 2012 is maybe 4.5 million systems or so, which is quite low. But I think with the increased availability for Ford, I think that is really important to highlight again. And then safety ratings and a greater focus on safety from authorities and other directions. I think the consumer awareness will just increase by that, and then hence the take rate of ADAS and video analytics. So I think it's been a slow start, but in the coming couple of years, we will see much higher take rates. I'm convinced.
Okay, and Helena, for viewers that want to get a bit more information on the general trends and such that we've talked about today, do you have any upcoming research reports or conference presentations, etc., that you can point them to for additional information?
Sure. I mean, I'm currently working on an update on both the ADAS report and automotive camera modules report. And, this is two-way communication. I'll be happy to speak to anybody about the market, what is happening now, and then obviously share with me as well any knowledge I have. Feel free to contact me. And I believe I'm going to be speaking at the next summit you have. Is that in September?
I think the one you're speaking at is the one in July, if I recall, but I might have that flip-flopped. But yes, one of the next
one of them anyway.
Yeah,
so it's a chance to meet my audience.
Yeah, we look forward to hosting you and hearing what you have to say.
Great.
So, on behalf of the Embedded Vision Alliance, I'd like to thank Helena Perslow again for her time on Skype with me today, discussing the automotive driver assistance market and trends associated with it. And I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in today and listening to what we have to say. Please do check out the other videos and other content available on the Embedded Vision Alliance website. And as I mentioned, this is the second in a series of planned interviews with various IMS Research analysts that cover various markets in which embedded vision currently and/or will have a presence in the future. So, thank you again for your time. And
Thank
have
you,
a good
Brian.
day. Bye-bye.
Bye.